Welcome to the Movie in Your Mind podcast, where we dive into classic movies that have left a significant cultural mark, but that our guests have somehow never seen. Each episode, we explore their expectations and imagined ideas about these iconic films, then contrast them with their immediate reactions after finally viewing them. Today we are watching Taxi Driver. All right, welcome to the Movie in Your Mind podcast. I'm joined by Rodney, who is a producer of video games and TV.
Hello, thank you for having me.
So tell me about yourself. What is your relation to film?
I've seen a few before.
You have?
They were
okay.
Good. The truthful answer is that I've been, it's weird to say, like, I've been a movie fan my whole life, but there's this part of me that's like, who isn't a movie fan, right?
They're out there.
I know. Like, I even have some friends who, it's not like they don't like movies. It's just like, they just sometimes watch movies and like, that was fun. That was nice, right? But like, you know, I guess it's funny. My mom and my dad are a perfect example. My mom was a big movie fan. And my dad fell into that camp of like, yeah, I'll go to the movies. If like weeks went by and he didn't see a movie, it wouldn't bother him, right?
Yeah.
My mom was always like, it's Friday, like, let's go see this new movie or whatever. And I came from a family of doctors. Wow. And I was thinking they'd be like, what do you mean you want to go to film school?
Yeah.
You got to be a doctor. And they were like, no, it's really cool. And then my favorite thing to do was be like going to the video store. We just don't have that anymore, obviously. It's not the same cruising through a queue on Netflix,
No, it's
right?
not the same.
But walking around the video store and just like seeing all these covers and being like, what's that?
Yeah.
What's this? What, like, the magic that might be held in this VHS tape, right?
Absolutely.
Usually the cover is just better than the movie you get, right? Look, we both went to NYU and like living in New York, there's like so many like art house theaters and opportunities to see like more obscure shit, you know?
Absolutely.
And to this day, like, I just genuinely think one of the most magical experiences a person can have, if you like movies, is watching a movie. And I often just go to the movies by myself.
It's the best.
Thank you. Yeah. It is the best. Like a lot of people,
pure experience. If you go and see the wrong kind of movie with the wrong type of friend, and even your impression of them is they're hating this, and then it just taints your...
Yeah.
There's nothing like seeing a movie by yourself.
I have no idea how many of your fans listen to Temple Trauma. And
all of them.
I don't know if we're even talking about Temple Trauma.
Doesn't everybody listen to Temple Trauma?
Well, it's a massive podcast. I've mentioned on there like my love of the Terrifier franchise.
Yes.
You know what? Fuck off. I see those by myself. I don't need anyone. I don't need to turn to anyone and have them say
no
like...
wonder you love them so much.
Like after when part 3 comes out, I'm going by myself.
Yes.
I do not need to sit with someone who goes, well, I didn't think the story was very good. Fuck off.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. So tell me how you consumed movies growing up. What was the first horror movie you saw?
I have distinct memories of like my dad taking me to see Pet Sematary in the theater. And I think that came out, is that 86? No, 88?
Late 80s.
Late 80s. I would have been, I was under 10. Right?
I watched it at home and that freaked me out. That kid with his head.
Yeah, I had to leave.
Spilling out of his
head. That was
head.
the exact part.
Oh.
I have this very distinct memory of like the guy getting hit by the truck and he's like on the operating table with his brain spilling out. And I was like, no, we have to go. We have to go.
Dad.
And my dad took me out to the lobby.
Take me to American Tail. I don't need to see this.
And we talked in the lobby and I calmed down and I was like, okay, we can go back in. I'm ready. And like, I don't know, 15 minutes had passed. We walk back in, I opened the theater doors and there's like the guy.
The kid shows up again,
but he's with his brain hanging out and he's like, the ground is sour. And I was like, no, we gotta go.
God,
never mind.
It's so scary. So let's get into how you might have missed this movie. Are you a Martin Scorsese or Robert De Niro fan?
Yes, I'm definitely a Martin Scorsese fan. So I've seen more than half of Martin Scorsese's films, but there's a number of them I have not seen. So it's like, his name isn't big enough to make me see the movie simply because he directed it.
Right.
Again, he makes a lot of movies.
He does make a lot of movies.
But like,
you can still be a fan without having seen all his movies.
Yeah, then I'm a fan, right? In general, I go into a Martin Scorsese film with a good attitude. I usually think it's going to be good, and he usually delivers something unique, and I appreciate that.
Right. And you appreciate his style.
Yeah. Like, no, he's a very good filmmaker. I am a fan. Yeah, it's just sort of like there's holes in my knowledge.
Right. So why have you missed this one?
Why does anyone have missing gaps in their...
Well, sometimes, it'll be, that was too rated R for me. My parents wouldn't let me see it. Or everybody that I knew had already seen it. So
first of all, what year did the movie come out? Is it from the late 70s?
78?
Yeah, that's the reason.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because I was born in the early 80s.
Right.
1981, in fact. I'm not ashamed of my age, everyone. I'm 1981. I'm 42 years old, all right? Leave me the fuck alone. Or come say hi. I don't know what it is. I just don't really enjoy the look and pacing and tone of films from before the 80s. Mm-hmm. There are exceptions. There's always exceptions, right? My understanding is that things really kind of changed around Easy Rider, right? Is Easy Rider the film that like kind of
69, I believe.
Yeah, but that's the film that like
that was the opening of the auteur 70s film decade.
So like films before that, like old films, you know, like they have that like stage play kind of presence to them.
Yeah.
That,
the
like,
acting's different.
I can get down with that. Like there are movies like look, I love Arsenic and Old Lace. Fucking great film, right? Funny every time. Psycho, great movie, and that also doesn't have a really stage play. That movie feels really ahead of its time, right? Actually, a lot of Alfred Hitchcock films do it for me, but in general, like there's something that between Easy Rider and somewhere in the early '80s, the whole '70s, there was this stretch of like films that are like gritty urban realism. Like the vibe is, boy, doesn't life suck? Life sucks, and life is hard, right? And sometimes it's life sucks in the Vietnam jungle, and sometimes life sucks in New York City, right? Sometimes life sucks on some farm, right?
Okay.
But I don't like that vibe. Like I want my movies to be some kind of, I use the word fantastical, not meaning only elves and shit, but I want a fantastical adventure, right? Exceptions, Rocky is fucking great.
Yes.
That's from the 70s, I believe, late 70s.
But that's aspirational. That's
the thing. There's an aspirational thing to it. And so I tend to avoid these movies because I have no interest in living in those worlds, right?
Okay.
But I also am curious about the big ones, like the real famous ones. And so like there are just certain movies that have always escaped me, such as like 2001. For years I hadn't seen that. But then like
my eyes just got really wide.
No, when I was in college, I went to a screening of it and it blew my mind. It was fucking amazing, right? But like when it comes to Taxi Driver specifically, it just seems like such like a grim, kind of slow, boring movie about like how much it sucks to be poor in New York, right? And I was just like, I don't know, like it doesn't. Every time I think, should I watch this? I'm like, I'd rather watch something I'm going to enjoy.
All right, that's a fair enough reason.
Fuck your 70s films.
So what is your impression of the film in film history? I mean, you know, it is a classic.
Is this a well-known film? Do people like this?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah. That's why it's on this podcast. We're not going to cover freaking, you're not going
to do Oliver Stone's The Hand.
The Hand.
I am aware that Taxi Driver is like,
it has a cultural impact.
Of course. It's super famous.
What do you know about it?
Stars Robert De Niro, who, I'm a Robert De Niro fan. I also know it has Jodie Foster. I believe in her first role.
Yeah.
I think she plays like a teenage prostitute. I know the guy's name is Travis Bickle. And I know that it has the incredibly famous line, are you talking to me? You must be talking to me because I'm the only one here. He stands in front of a mirror and he's got a gun, right?
Right.
And that's kind of all I actually know about the movie. So, I mean, I literally have thought, what actually happens in the runtime? And I have ideas.
Let's dive in. What's your idea of that famous scene?
I think Robert De Niro is going to start off as like a depressed, probably like divorced guy. He's depressed. He's a taxi driver. And then one day he drives Jodie Foster somewhere and they strike up a friendship, an unlikely friendship, because those are what movies are made of.
Yes.
And either something will happen to her, like she'll be attacked, or he'll unrelated, like see someone else attacked, or maybe even he gets attacked and he just snaps and is like, I'm fucking sick of this city.
Right.
And he goes out and buys a gun. And I'm going to guess you talking to me probably happens around the halfway point. I guess right around the middle of the movie, he like shaves his head, and he basically from that point forward, it's called Descent into Madness time.
Right.
And he's going to start getting surly with customers. He probably like kills a couple dudes in the middle of the night, like in an alley or something. And like the movie probably ends with him like, I don't know, killing himself or getting gunned down by the cops. That'd be my guess.
Yeah. So you know that he shaves his head.
Oh yeah. I know he shaves his head.
Yeah.
I doubt he's going to go shoot up a mall, but if that happened, that would not be surprising either. Like the one thing I don't know about the movie, in my mind, is basically falling down. That's what I think it is. I think it's the sad story of a guy.
The 90s Michael Douglas film.
Yes. I think it's the story of like a guy who's been pushed too far. It's all about like the pressures of being alive in capitalism. And if the movie is about Robert De Niro shooting up the public and getting gunned down by the cops, I believe that.
Mm-hmm.
But if it's also more of like a vigilante tale where, the newspapers are like, someone's killing people in the streets, that wouldn't surprise me either. I actually don't know which way that's going to go.
Interesting.
But I know he's going to get gunned down at the end. Almost guaranteed.
Yeah. What do you picture happening in Act 1? How do you picture it beginning?
I think like shots in New York, fucking gross 70s New York where everything's dirty. A lot of like drug dealers and shit. I bet you there's a scene of him waking up in his apartment, got to establish his shitty little apartment.
Yeah.
I think there will be maybe a scene of him like showing up at the taxi stand or whatever it's called, where all the taxis are, and like little exchange with the boss or some other guy, right? Like,
are you picturing Taxi and Danny DeVito?
Yeah. I'm really picturing that guy. And he's like grumpy or whatever, and he's like, whole world's going to shit or whatever. And then maybe a little montage of him just like picking people up, dropping people off.
Yeah.
And I bet we meet Jodie Foster somewhere around like minute 10 to 15. That'd be my guess. That will cover probably like 10 minutes, her chatting. Maybe they go get a coffee or something. I don't know. Maybe he even does the like, you're too young to be doing this line. And she goes, none of your fucking business, mister.
Right. What other fares would he pick up in Act 1, do you think?
Oh, boy. I imagine he will pick up some kind of like generic white banker type, like in a suit, who's just like, but he's like looking at papers or just he's distracted, right?
Yeah.
I could see him picking up like two ladies who are just kind of like engaged in gossip while shopping, maybe, I think the important thing is that everyone doesn't really acknowledge his presence. He's invisible to them.
Yeah.
With the exception of one guy. I think we'll get one guy who's just ranting at him. The guy who's just ranting about politics and how the world's going to hell.
Yeah.
Robert De Niro's just nodding, going, sure, bud, but we see he doesn't really care.
Right.
There's also possibly the New York tourist character. Someone who's just like, oh my God, look, it's the Empire State Building,
And is Travis Bickle a good taxi driver? In the 70s, the cliche was, oh, I drive a cab, so people expect a little chit chat and this and that. How does that work?
I think he will barely talk in the openings of the film. I think mostly he'll give grunts and little and that way when Jodie Foster starts talking to him and he starts actually opening up with her, I think it will be like a sign, like, oh, he likes talking to her.
Okay.
I just don't picture him driving around being like, can't believe the Knicks won again,
Right. Any other New York locations or depictions of New York that you think will be covered in this movie?
I would find it shocking if there isn't like a scene or two in the subways, right? Probably the traditional scene of like him sitting on the subway car and like looking around at randos, just like gross New Yorkers, someone being mugged while a guy reads the newspaper, not caring. I have a real cliched taste for this film already.
Yeah. Well, this movie's been so influential that you are picking up the pieces from our culture that it's influenced.
I fully have to acknowledge that, like, whether I like it or not, the power of this film when it came out was probably undeniable, right? I always talk about the Texas Chainsaw Massacre, right?
Yeah.
Like, I wasn't alive when that came out, but dude, if you had been in the theater watching that thing, that must have been traumatizing, right? It was unreal for those audiences. So I imagine there's a reason Taxi Driver is beloved. And yeah, if like Martin Scorsese invented the gritty, dirty New York feel, then I get why it's famous,
Yeah.
There's always the traditional, like, let's go to Coney Island for a scene, let's have a hot dog by the pier, like looking out of the ocean, the roller coaster as he looks at the gun in his pocket or whatever.
Oh, okay.
I would say those are probably the most likely of famous places. I mean, I can't imagine there's not a shot of the Statue of Liberty. I don't think he'll go there, though.
Right. What about a love story? Is there any romantic interest in this?
That's something I never really considered. I don't think there will be.
Okay.
I suppose I can't imagine he has a romance with Jodie Foster, who's like 15, I think, in the film. But it is a 70s film, and maybe they kiss a little bit. I don't know. I feel really weird about it. Like,
yeah,
maybe that's also,
we don't have to go down that road.
Okay, she is 15, right, in the movie.
I believe she was like 12 when they filmed it, and she's playing 15 or 16, and then her older sister body doubled for her.
Oh, really? Okay,
yeah,
but no, I don't think there will be a love interest in this film.
Okay,
no, Scorsese films don't always have a love interest. Like Departed doesn't. Oh yeah, it does. Never mind. He does. He is big on the love interest. thinking about it now, how could it not? But I just don't know who it would be.
Okay. Is there anything else that you're expecting or wanting to see in this movie?
I do want to see him kill some people, right? Like if this turns out that it's just like the story of a guy who's like angry and carries a gun, and then he like finds Jesus, that will be very disappointing.
Explore that. So what would that be if he was a total pacifist? What movie would that be in your mind?
That's the story of a guy who like realizes that being angry doesn't carry any like, there's no like, revenge is not a good dish to serve, you know? And he just finds peace with his job. And basically that movie would start with a guy who doesn't talk to his customers and he's all curmudgeonly and shit. And then the final moments of the film, a guy gets into his cab and he's like, so nice day, huh? How about them Knicks, right? In fact, there'd be a line at
the end.
There'd be a line at the beginning of the movie where he's like, someone says, you got to be nice to the customers. He's like, what do you want me to do? Fucking talk about the Knicks, you know? And then at the end of the movie, guy would get in, he'd smile and he'd go, how about them Knicks? And then the camera would track up and some kind of 70s song would kick in and the credits would roll, right?
I love it. The pacifist taxi driver. Yes.
I'm gonna go on the record. I think he's gonna shoot himself in his own cab at the end. I'm gonna go for extra points for that.
Interesting.
I think he gets in his cab. Maybe he even goes to Coney Island and he blows his brains out looking at the roller coaster.
I love that. Okay.
Honestly,
how would he find Jesus in your pacifist version?
I guess he would meet some kind of like, you know, a customer in the cab, right? Who senses his pain and gives him a card, right? And the card would say like, come to this church or join us. We have group sessions or whatever. And then like one night he'd get drunk and like be stumbling around and he'd like look up at this building and look at the card and realize he's like found himself, just wandered into the front of it. And he goes in. God, the scene is from like every other movie. And he'd go in and he'd go sit down. And then like the guy talking would be telling some story about how he was at his lowest. And then he found redemption and or Jesus. And his mind would pick up, you know, and some small little changes in his life. And he'd like go visit his ex-wife and be like, you know, I never was a good husband to you. And she'd go, Harry. And he'd be like, have a good life, babe. And then he'd walk away and you'd be like, oh, he closed that loop, you know? And and then he'd go find the hooker and he'd be like, hey, you got to stop being a hooker, you know? Like here's this card, go to this group.
And
then he'd get the customer and then he'd say, how about them Knicks?
Right. I love that beginning and end. That's freaking brilliant.
A lot of movies, I kind of can picture what fills the runtime before seeing it, you know?
Yeah.
But I genuinely don't know how this movie holds its 2-hour runtime. Like I have no clue what's going to happen. So I'm excited to see.
Yeah.
There must be a giant plot point that I don't know about.
You covered a lot.
Okay.
There's a lot that you didn't cover.
Is the part where he goes and plays for the Knicks? Because that's going to be great.
Where there's a whole French plantation scene.
I heard about the French plantation scene.
All right, let's go watch this movie.
Let's do it. We'll see you shortly.
Attention, spoilers ahead. We are about to jump into our deep examination of the movie. So if you haven't watched it yet, I strongly recommend you do to fully enjoy this discussion. If you're already familiar with the film, here's a quick refresher to set the stage.
I can't sleep nights.
Just want to wake up town nights, South Bronx, Harlem?
I work anytime, anywhere. 6 in the afternoon to 6 in the morning, sometimes even 8 in the morning. 6 days a week, sometimes 7 days a week. It's a long hustle, but it keeps me real busy. I heard on the radio some fleet driver from Bell just got all cut up.
Stick up?
No, he got cut up by some crazy fucker. Cut half his ear off. Can I have chuckles there? You have any jujubes? They last longer. I'd like to get some jujubes.
What you see is what we got. $1.85.
Then what exactly do you want?
Would you like to come have some coffee and pie with me?
Why?
And then when I came inside and I met you, I saw in your eyes and I saw the way you carried yourself that you're not a happy person.
You gotta be kidding.
What?
This is a dirty movie.
No, this is a movie that a lot of couples come to. All kinds of couples go here.
You sure about that?
Yeah. Did you get my flowers and you didn't get them? Couldn't I send some flowers? Okay. Can I call you again? Then tomorrow or the next day? Okay. No, I'm gonna. Okay. Yeah. Sure. Okay. So long.
Can I ask you something, Travis?
Sure.
What is the one thing about this country that bugs you the most?
Whatever it is, he should clean up this city here, because this city here is like an open sewer, you know? It's full of filth and scum. I think that the president should just clean up this whole mess here. He should just flush it right down the fucking toilet.
I think I know what you mean, Travis.
You talking to me? Well, then who the hell else are you talking? You talking to me? Well, I'm the only one here. Who the fuck do you think you're talking to?
You're a funny guy. But looks aren't everything. Go ahead, man. Have a good time.
Hey, look, Sport never treated me bad. I mean, he didn't beat me up or anything like that once.
But you can't allow him to do the same to other girls. You can't allow him to do that. He is the lowest kind of person in the world. Somebody's got to do something to him. He's the scum of the earth.
It's a Colt 25 automatic. It's a nice little gun. It's a beautiful little gun. How about dope? Grass, ash, coke, mescaline, downers, Nebutal, tunol, chloral hydrates. How about uppers, amphetamines?
No, I'm not interested in that stuff.
Crystal meth. I can get you crystal meth. Nitrous oxide. How about that? How about a Cadillac? I get you a brand new Cadillac with the pink slip for $2,000.
See the woman in the window? So I want you to see that woman because that's my wife. And I'm gonna kill her. Listen, there's nothing else. I'm gonna kill her.
Son of a bitch, you! I'll kill you! I'll kill you! I'll kill you! Don't shoot him!
All right, so how about them Mets?
How about them Knicks?
How about them Knicks? Is that what you said? How do you feel after watching Taxi Driver for the first time? It's quite an experience, isn't it?
Yeah, I feel good. Like I liked the movie.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know. I have a lot to say, and it's kind of like you're listening to a different Rodney.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, the Rodney from before.
You're a changed man.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, 2 hours of like slow bluesy sax music.
Yeah,
kind of puts you into like a hypnotic state. You know?
Yes,
first of all, okay, I liked the movie.
Mm-hmm.
It looked better than I thought it would. Like I know it's a Martin Scorsese movie, and he's very good. It's just like it had like a more sense of style to it than I was expecting. Like there's a lot, there's a lot of very good shots.
Yeah.
But also like it's mostly the movie I thought I was going to get.
Mm-hmm.
There were some differences.
Right.
But something about the ending doesn't sit right with me.
Really?
And I think those things. I was really enjoying it up until the final like 5 minutes in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt myself throughout the entire movie, I was like, I should be not really liking this, but this is because it's like that 70s thing that I don't like, but this is really good. Yeah. I was like, I get why people like this.
Mm-hmm.
And then in the final 5 minutes, I felt myself going, oh God, come on, really? Fuck off. Like that. And so endings are hard. Clearly I'm in the wrong because people love this movie, or I'm in the minority, perhaps.
At what point are you talking about? When did it shift?
When it is revealed that he didn't die.
Yes.
From that point forward, I was very surprised. Up to that moment, I was like, yep, this is exactly what I pictured. He's gunned down, and now we're going to end on this iconic image of him like doing finger gun to his head with a bloody finger.
Right.
And then like, oh, here comes the sweeping shot of the police cars, and we're gonna close it on out. And then to be like, oh, he survived and he fixed Jodie Foster's problem and he's a hero. And like, just kind of like forget about the fact that he's like a lunatic who tried to kill a senator. Oh, and then just like the blonde chick just happens, Sybil Shepherd, it just happens to like get into his cab and she's being all weird and like, oh, I read about, and like, I get it. I like the little moment at the very end where he basically, it's implied that she's like, sort of like, hey, I'm into you now.
Right.
And he's like, basically like, fuck off, and drives away. I get that. And I do like that.
Mm-hmm.
There's just something about the way the final couple minutes just feels very forced. Because I was thinking, like, why would this movie have been such a big hit if it's just the story of a dude who gets gunned down, right?
Right.
But I guess there's a lot of movies that are about just depressing shit that happens.
Right.
I don't know. How do you feel about the ending of this movie?
I think you need to sit with it for a little bit longer. And most people assume that, did this happen or did this not happen? That whole ending is in his head as he's dying. because it's too perfect. When I first saw the movie, I was thrown by the ending and being like, that was out of character of the movie. That was kind of big curveball. But the more I talk to people and people say, it's like, oh yeah, is it like, did it happen or did it not happen? Is it all in his mind? It sits better with me. So
I was having that thought of like, is this going through his head as he's dying or whatever, right? Like I did have that thought. So clearly that is landing. That's just so not a Martin Scorsese thing, you know? And like, that doesn't mean, sorry, who wrote them? Oh, it's Paul Schrader. So to be fair, you know,
I'm curious if it was just too dark of an ending for 1976 for it just to end with a bloodbath and credits roll, or if they felt like they had to do something like this.
I earlier referenced the Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Yes.
And then in this film, they drive by a movie theater where that's playing. And I was like, oh, look at that. And like, tell me that movie ends with the girl getting away, but it just ends with like everyone dying and like, it literally just, if I recall, it just ends with like her getting in a truck and like the dude
and just
stands on the highway
screaming and laughing and
with the chainsaw, right?
Leatherface flipping around doing his dance and like.
But like, so I mean, clearly there are movies with down endings. You know, I mean, I forget when Invasion of the Body Snatchers came out. If that was before or after this, but like that has a down ending. So like,
right.
I guess audiences would have been fine with it. And I see what you're saying. Like when she gets in the car at the end, there is this like weird dreamlike way that it's shot. And I also noticed like his hair has grown back to normal, but I assume it's been months since it. Like, so I guess what I'm saying is it's not quite pushed enough to be clear.
Right.
And that's okay. That's totally fine. But sometimes I feel like that is a bit of a cop-out.
Yes.
Because it's like saying, you can have either ending, right?
Right. And, it's up to you. Make a decision.
Yeah. You can have My Dinner with Andre, and then at the end of the movie, he like sees a squirrel in a tree wink at him, and then people on the internet go like, well, did he actually have dinner with Andre?
Right.
You know?
Right.
Oh my God, this film is so deep. Personally, for the rest of my life, I will assume he bled to death and just imagined it all because I prefer that ending.
Right.
I think the issue is just that like the movie doesn't speak that language at any point earlier in the film. Like you don't have moments of him imagining things.
Right.
You know what I mean? The movie presents itself as a very grounded thing. And then to end with like it's a vision of death, you know? I don't know. It just rubs me the wrong way. And it might be a case of like with time I can get down with that ending.
Yeah, and how strong of an ending would it have been if he just, you know,
I would have just
finger guns and then bam,
I would have
roll
just
credits.
Much preferred that.
Yeah.
You know, and I am curious if that's how it was originally shot or if they shot an additional ending. Like I know nothing about the history of this film.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, I'm cutting in here. I've recorded this little segment long after Chris and I recorded the actual episode because there was a crucial piece of information that we didn't look up, and it's what did Paul Schrader and Martin Scorsese have to say about the ending? And the fact of the matter is, they both say that it is 100% reality. He actually survives, he actually is a hero, and he goes on with his life. It is not a fantasy, and I think that's kind of stupid. And I much prefer thinking of it as a fantasy. I actually saw a guy on Reddit say Taxi Driver would be a perfect film if it ended 5 minutes earlier. And I totally agree with that. But I just wanted to interject here from, I guess, the future, depending how when you're listening to this. I just wanted to interject to say that let's put that to rest. It is, in fact, all real. Okay, back to the conversation.
What did you think of the gore of the final shootout?
Oh, that was great. Like when he like blows that dude's hand off, you know?
Isn't it crazy? It's so dimly lit too. It really feels like it's so gritty and like they're in the bowels of hell. And when he walks in dragging that one guy who keeps yelling, I'm going to kill you, I'm going to kill you. And poor Jody's there having to witness that. I love how it's such an awkward, violent scene too. It's not just, you know, some choreographed shootout. It's just so bloody and realistic and gritty and just people suffering and messy. It's really powerful.
When he's the whole last little sequence where he's killing everyone, I thought to myself, oh yeah, there's the Martin Scorsese. Right. Go to a Marty. Like Marty has this way of like we're best friends or something, but he has this way of doing gunplay where it feels the way guns probably are, you know? Yeah. Like people get shot and like someone's fingers get blown off, and there's like always like a shot of a guy holding his hand, and like it really conveys the violence of guns, you know, which I think you see that across most of his work, right? I wasn't expecting the level of gore that, and again, by today's standards, it's pretty tame,
right?
But it's still gory. That is gory, you know.
And in the context of the movie, it's shocking.
Yes, because the movie is fairly tame for most of its runtime, you know. I mean, tame in terms of violence, anyway.
Right. How did you feel about? Were you cheering for him, or were you just like dreading this whole thing playing out the way it did?
I think this is a really interesting topic because like the whole movie, I was like, this guy's a fucking weirdo, and I do not want to hang out with him. I totally get why Sybil Shepherd does not want to go on a date with him,
watch a porn with him.
Yeah, he's really bizarre, but also like I'm also with him, and I think that is maybe why the movie stands the test of time.
Yeah,
is because he is a very complex character.
Yes,
and Joker, Joaquin Phoenix Joker, is such a fucking copy of this movie.
Yes.
Like, look, I'm not.
I think they are openly
about. It's not like I hope no one catches on.
It was King of Comedy, Taxi Driver. Yes. They were very open about their influence.
And I guess I never realized how close it is. Like they in many ways feel like the same thing. And in fact, Joker also has that like, that part was all in his head sequence.
Yes,
but that is made much more clear. You know what I mean? In Joker.
What did you think of the love story? Because you didn't mention anything about that in your earlier expectations.
I genuinely was not expecting there to be any kind of romantic story. And then we meet Sybil Shepherd playing the character of Betsy, and she works at a campaign office for Senator Palpatine, right?
Palpatine, but
I'm going to call him Senator Palpatine.
A lot of people say that George Lucas just ripped that off and was like, took inspiration.
Very close.
It's very, very close. Yes.
Man, I never realized how gorgeous Sybil Shepherd was, at least in this film, you know, like, oh my God.
Stunning.
So when he starts first like pursuing her, I was like, this is a whole plot I was not expecting in this film, right? But then she's like completely dropped from the film. To me, that's uneven storytelling.
Right.
And there's no rules on these things. Again, like if Marty were here, he'd tell me to fuck off. Obviously, he made a classic, right? I think for me, here's exactly what happened. He meets her and they go to this diner and he's like winning her over. And you're like, oh, fuck yeah, she's into him.
Yeah.
And then he like takes her to this like porn theater, which is it's a big move, right?
Odd choice.
And she doesn't say, I don't want to go here. She goes like, isn't this a porn theater? And he's like, no, like people come here all the time. Like the look on her face at that time suggested to me, oh, she's into this. I think I even said something to you like, wow, quite a girl, right?
Right.
Because I thought she's going to like, they're going to watch the film together and it's going to turn out like they both kind of like they're into kinky shit.
Right.
And, like, they're going to start having, they're going to start sleeping together, right?
She does play it as if like, all right, what do you have in store here? And she's willing to go where he's going. So.
I mean, I understand that he says, no, it's not like that. Like couples come here all the time, but it's very clearly a porn theater.
Yes.
She's an adult woman, like working at a campaign office for a senator in New York City. She knows what a porn theater is. And so like she easily could have said, I really don't want to go see this. Can we just go get some pizza or something, right? Or can we go see the Texas Chainsaw Massacre? It's playing down the street. But instead she like willingly goes in. And then like is so put off by like there's like an orgy happening on screen. That she just like storms out. And then he's like, hey, I'm really sorry. And she turns into, excuse me, a total fucking bitch. Cause she's like, oh, fuck you. Like, why would you take me to such a place? I'm leaving. That you like to watch porn, you know? And he's like, we can go see another movie. Like up till now, you've been having a good time. I can't imagine like taking a woman out and having like a good time with her, and then I take her to a movie she doesn't like, and she's just like, "Don't talk to me ever again. Fuck you."
There's a difference between taking her to a movie she doesn't like and taking her to a porn movie.
But she knew what she was going into.
But a human reaction is like, "I can't believe this is happening," and it doesn't set in until she sees the nudity in the movie, and then goes, "Wait a minute, this isn't a joke." You know, like you like the guy. Something's going on, and then, you know, someone takes an awkward step in a date, and then you're willing to forgive a few things, and then once you realize this isn't a joke, this is an actual porn movie, I think it's a very proper human reaction that she has, and it just goes to show that he has no social intelligence whatsoever by first off taking her to this and then not realizing what he's done and how offensive he's being by insisting, oh, no, it's okay. Couples come here all the time.
Look, this is, we could talk.
She's definitely turned off by it.
And look, I think if the intention is to make me, the viewer, upset, it makes me, I suddenly relate to him because
the writing is so good that you do see where he's coming from and you see where she's coming from. And it's very realistic. And I think in that sense where he doesn't think there's anything wrong with it. And then she does. And even though they were having a good time, this is the moment. And he cannot recover because he's not equipped to apologize and realize what he did wrong. And I think that's what's so beautiful about the writing, really.
I get that. I genuinely do. And obviously, no, don't take women to porn theaters unless maybe they bring it up first. I don't know, right? I guess if we were to play this out, it's in that moment, she senses something's actually really weird and wrong with this guy. Yeah. And she's right because he's a fucking lunatic, right? And so she actually did make the right choice, right? I can't argue with that. But there's just something about it that just, I don't know, it just rubs me the wrong way.
Sure.
And it's I don't think he handled the situation poorly. I don't think he goes, what's your fucking problem? He apologized.
Right. Yeah.
And he was I do think this is important. The movie they go see, they prominently show the title of it. I don't remember what it is. And I understand it's clearly in the porn part of Times Square or wherever they're at. But I wasn't certain if this is some kind of, because the film has subtitles.
Right.
And I was is this possibly, or is he taking her to some kind of French art film that happens to have sex in it, right? It's unclear because we don't see a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
What is the level of this movie, if you will, right? And so when he says earlier, guys bring their girls here all the time or whatever, I honestly in that moment thought he's taking her to a tawdry French film, right?
Because it doesn't start out with, here's your pizza lady, and then bounce out. It is a little bit of a different
there's clothed men and women talking and having some conversation, right?
Yeah.
And look, again, times are different. I watch a lot of porn. I love porn. I feel like everyone should watch porn. And so the fact that this woman gets so worked up about it, it's a little weird. But I also understand in the 70s, it was a different thing. You had to go to a fucking movie theater. How weird, right? Yeah. You just had to sit there and watch the movie. I think the weirdest part of the whole movie is when he first goes and he's buying snacks.
How long are you going to be there?
I'm you're really going to just sit there and watch the movie, right?
Right. What did you think of the shot after when he tries to call her and get her back? And he's on the phone with her and he's trying to, score a second date. And he's like, can we do dinner? Can we do coffee? And then the camera literally pans away from him.
Oh, I thought it was great. It's obviously a psychological trick that conveys, the emptiness of the hallway. That I don't know. There's all kinds of ways to put it in, but it conveys the audience we're moving on. This is being left you get it. He can talk all day.
Yeah.
It's also you only hear his side of the conversation, but it's very clear that she's not giving him another chance. You know?
Apparently Scorsese said that's when they hit on basically the soul of the film was that shot, and how the camera's even getting bored or embarrassed for him and has to look away.
Oh, is that what it is?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense.
And when we were watching it, you were you literally said so painful. when the camera did that, and yes, Scorsese, he wins, points to him.
I think that's what I was saying with or meant by I was unprepared for how artistic some of the shots are, right? Even though why would I be? He's Martin Scorsese, and this is him at the height. Yeah, there's a number of ways he frames or moves the camera. I guess I pictured the movie being a little more static.
Right.
But no, it's a classy film,
Yeah.
But the point is, after he bombs out with the woman, my issue is that we have spent the whole fucking first part of this film meeting this woman. She has scenes without him, right?
Yes.
We've met her, we've set her up, he goes after her, and then she's just gone from the film. She's visually on screen a couple more times, but she doesn't have another line, I think, until the end of the movie. And that kind of thing always just bugs me because it's
I think it's working in the way that they wanted it to work, and that you were bummed that she's gone, and you feel his loss because you want her to be in the rest of the movie, and then basically Jodie takes over for the female presence at the end of the movie.
Yeah, I get all that. Clearly, it's a case of, it's like the movie's intentionally trying to upset me.
Yes.
And I'm upset.
Yes.
So I should be happy that
Right,
the movie has
it's
achieved,
working. Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So I guess I can't get mad about that. It's just, I was starting to go in a different direction with the film, and then the film was like, no, this actually is the movie about the lonely cab driver, right?
Right. What did you think of the politics of it?
I have a lot to say on the senator stuff.
Yeah, the senator stuff and the whole, we need to wash these streets clean of the scum. He's the scum of the earth. There's this whole, he does have a little bit of a political bent to the movie, or at least the character.
He's not wrong. Like, based on the New York City being shown here, I understand if you went to New York City in 1976, whenever this movie was, is a disgusting fucking hellscape that needs to be wiped out. And in fact, that's what they did. They didn't bomb it, but they definitely cleaned it up a lot, right?
Yeah.
I felt like Senator Palpatine is, I don't really get like why he wants to assassinate him. As far as I track the movie, dude gets in his cab early in the film, and he's like, "Oh, you're Senator Palpatine, right?" And he's like, "What are you gonna do?" And he's like, "I'm going to destroy the Jedi." And he's like, "Yeah, wipe them out, all of them." He basically is like, "What do you think's wrong with the city?" And Travis Bickle's like, "I think it's a fucking hellscape, and the whole city just needs to be cleaned, right?" And like, the senator clearly is picking up like vibes of like, this guy's a little unhinged, but he's not wrong, right?
No, he's
like,
not.
And Travis Bickle doesn't say someone just needs to like drop a nuke on this city and burn all the kids.
Right.
Like, he's like, this
Just
city needs to be cleaned up, right?
Yeah. There's nothing wrong with that.
And as far as I can tell, the senator is like, "Thank you for that. I agree with you." And he goes about his life. Like, there's not a moment when Travis Bickle is like watching the senator on TV and the senator says something contradictory.
Right.
And then he goes, "That fucking guy, I'm going to make him pay."
Right.
And I think this movie lives in that special land of like subtle, complex thinking, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And sometimes I like that because there's like, he has his posters up in his house or his apartment.
Yeah.
And it could be that like, in a weird way, his anger at like the woman for leaving him is directed at the senator. But basically, the movie just suddenly shifts to him being about like, I want a gun now, but there's no moment that like makes me realize why he needs a gun, right? He just like, he's like, now I've decided I want a gun, and now I've decided I'm going to kill the senator, right? And now I've decided to just murder some other people. And like, I think I'm more used to a more traditional, this leads to that, right?
Like, you were expecting him to like get mugged, and then now I need a gun.
Exactly.
Because,
Yeah. Instead, like, someone tells the story. It's even the way the scenes are ordered is a little weird. In that, like, early in the film, one of the other cab drivers, I think Wizard or someone, one of those three that he's always hanging out with, tells the story about how some other cabbie got cut up by a crazy guy, right? And I would expect that scene to come right before him like meeting the guy to buy guns.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Because then you'd be like, oh, I get it. He heard the story, therefore he goes and buys guns. And in this movie, it's like those two events are separated by like 45 minutes or an hour, right?
Yeah.
I think the whole movie is subtle and not hitting you over the head with these things.
Right.
But I kind of wish it hit me over the head a little harder with certain things.
Interesting. What do you think of him as he's basically Travis Bickle is a sort of like madman icon in the sense of like Holden Caulfield or, one of these things that people follow and fall into and relate to. What did you think of the loneliness of his character? And we were just talking about how, it's almost incel the movie. And how does that compare to Joker and what you think of the state of the male idea nowadays?
These are big fucking questions. You should come on my show where we just talk about like, oh, I liked when his head got cut off, It's a really complicated topic. I think
he's also a Marine, he has PTSD, there's all these things cooking in the character.
I don't know how much of this film specifically is trying to be a commentary on whether you want to call it male fragility or the state of being a white man in America versus just being a character study of an individual, right? And I always think that's an issue when it comes to any kind of storytelling, right? Is the artist's intention to be like, I think as a good example, there's a very weird scene in this movie where Martin Scorsese shows up. He's just like a random customer in the cab who basically gives this little rant about how his wife is sleeping with a new man and he's planning to kill them both. And he uses the N-word. And that's super uncomfortable. And I don't know, I know it wasn't really cool back in the 70s, but it was obviously more accepted than it is now. That's my understanding. Forgive me if I'm wrong. But I was thinking it takes a lot of balls to be the director of the film and choose to play that part and say, I want to forever be seen on screen saying that word. Right? But that doesn't mean that Martin Scorsese feels that way.
Right.
He's playing a character. And that character is somewhat racist, right? So you see what I'm getting at in that, like, is there... What is the intent behind the thing, or are we just dealing with like this is the story of one dude, right?
Right.
Joker is a different case though, because it's about a character that pre-exists and everyone knows about it, right? Like everyone goes into Joker knowing ahead of time where we're going, right? You're like, he's going to become the Joker by the end of this movie.
I'm not so much asking for what you think the artist's intent is. It's just how does it make you feel, and what are your thoughts on how this reflects society in general?
I certainly am never taking a woman to a porn theater again. I have learned a valuable lesson.
Good.
Here's how, I mean, it makes me feel a little uncomfortable, right? The whole movie makes me feel uncomfortable, which it's supposed to.
Yeah.
He's also just like a fucking weirdo, right? I know that there are so many people, not just in this country, but in the world, who like have different levels of social anxiety and awkwardness. And I imagine a really frustrating experience is like wanting to find a partner. And every time you talk to a girl or a guy or whoever you're into, you just fuck it up. It just falls apart, right? And you're like, stupid, right? And if that happened enough times over time, I get how that would put you into a real bad place, right?
Yeah, for sure.
So I think that's part of the reason you relate to the guy, right?
Yeah.
Because his actions, you know, the actions speak louder than words. And both his words and his actions are all very kind, you know?
Right. He feels like he's doing the right thing. He's trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
At least at the beginning.
Yes. And so that's what makes it an interesting movie, because you're like, I sympathize with you. I get where you're coming from, but you are misguided, you know? But how that makes me feel about like the overall state of the world, I don't know. Like, I'm sorry if you're having a hard time getting laid. Like, watch some videos, like learn how to like chat with women, and like stop fucking being racist on the internet, right?
Yeah.
Not to say that these are all the same people, right? But like, please don't take this out of context.
Yes.
All right. To all listeners, we live in a country that unfortunately has a lot of shootings, right? And I was actually thinking, because on the way over here, I was just listening to some random radio station, and there was straight up like a guy, like the talk show host was just talking about how like there's like a good site to buy guns, and if you use his name, you get 10% off, right? God. And I was like, it's fucked up that there's like a fucking website where you can just go like buy guns, right? The fact that like I feel like I'm living in like a dystopian like hellscape when it's like use code whatever to get 10% off your AR rifle.
Right.
And so whenever there is a shooting, I think it's disgusting. And for the record, we should just fucking ban guns. Like guns should be illegal. Sorry if it's too political for your movie podcast. But I understand that some people have this rage that starts boiling inside of them, and they feel like trapped and they don't know what to do. And the answer is, if you're listening, go talk to a therapist, go talk to someone, right? The answer is not to shoot people.
Yes.
But I get why people just explode. And they're like, I have this anger and I don't know what to do, and I just need to like take it out on someone, right? In fact, I recently read this book where someone defined revenge as like the act of wanting to make someone else understand your pain through either physical or psychological means, right? Yeah. You've inflicted a wound upon me so great that through revenge, I want you to experience the same. I want you to know what you did to me. That's why and I was like, wow, that's really meaningful, right? That's why before we watched the movie, I was like, I don't know if this is going to be the story of a guy who just goes and shoots up a mall, right?
Right.
But it's not. It's like a guy who all of his violence is directed at, but like mostly criminals, right? Like he shoots a dude robbing a store, and he shoots people who are pimping a 12-year-old girl.
Yeah,
12
yeah.
and a half.
Yeah. They're not innocent is what your point is. Yeah.
But again, he also, that's the part about the senator that's weird, because he's like, I'm going to just kill this dude in cold blood, but that dude hasn't wronged him in any way, shape, or form. Right.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess what I'm getting at is this movie feels somehow ahead of its time, but also it feels like this movie doesn't age.
Totally.
Because
we still have the same sickness in our country.
Exactly. There is this sickness that like makes people feel alone and isolated, and that like their only way to be heard and to make a difference is through violence. And I think that's fucked up. And I have no idea what it's like to be those people, but like, I'm trying to help you stop taking women to porn theaters. That will help, right?
Paul Schrader wrote this whole movie about loneliness and the pathology of loneliness. So most men can relate a little bit to rejection and that feeling of being alone, at least for a little bit. And then there is that path where you either decide to better yourself or go buy a gun. It seems like it's something that was very specific to that time period, but is, like you said, is timeless and is still going on now. But I feel like what's not in this one is the whole feeling of being left behind, like either by technology or by society. I feel like he's just lonely, and he's also extending his loneliness because through his own actions subconsciously. I think that's something that Paul Schrader said that he found, was that a lot of people, when they're trying not to be lonely, but they self-sabotage to continue their loneliness because they somehow either are afraid to engage, or, you know, they just want to keep their loneliness because that's all they have. I don't know.
Yeah, like people inherently fear change. Right. And like that's a very deep, complex thing. Like I really feel uncomfortable with the term incel for some reason. I don't know, but we all use it. Like, you're right. But like, if you were to give them an opportunity to like have sex,
right,
I imagine they would say yes, I'm in. I don't think they would self-sabotage it, right? But then again, I know there is a certain type who's like so nervous about the topic that they actually might screw it up because they're afraid, I don't know, it might not live up to expectations or whatever. And this movie isn't about that, right?
Yeah,
it's not the story of a man who's afraid to have sex.
Right.
Though, just for the record, he buys the flowers after taking her to the porn theater. You got to do that first. It's flowers, then to the porn
flowers
theater.
are not the last step.
But it's being lonely is hard. And you know, someone great once said, like, we're all alone, right? How you deal with that, I think, is important. You know, like I'm not lonely, but I enjoy my alone time. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm blessed to have a loving wife and a bunch of friends and good family. So like I rarely feel alone. But loneliness can come like in the middle of the night at 2 a.m. when you're least expecting it. You can be like, I have all these things, but I feel lonely.
Right.
And it's super depressing, right? But like, if you were just inundated with that feeling all day, every day, that would start to really, it would start to,
warp
I see how it would actually color your perception of reality to the point that when you meet a new person, you would go into that conversation with a negative attitude about them. You would just assume this person also isn't going to like me or let me down. So fuck them. Right.
Yeah.
And that's not quite what's happening in this film, but that's, I think, a larger thing in general, you know?
Absolutely. What did you think of his narration? I feel like this kind of goes into the realm of, you know, Apocalypse Now, one of the great narrations of movies.
I really loved it. In fact, when the movie started, he first starts narrating, my first thought was like, I should have guessed there'd be narration, right? But in general, I love a narrator. When I went to film school, one of the things I don't gotta say hammered into your brain, but was frequently taught was voiceover is for lazy story.
Weak. Yes, exactly. Like,
voiceover is for people who like don't know how to get their story across. But I like a voiceover. I like it. Fucking tell me. Like, don't talk throughout the whole movie, but like, tell me what you're thinking. Set some shit up, right?
Yeah.
Sometimes it's used in a really clever way. And like, again, Robert De Niro is a fucking great actor.
How awesome.
And like, this is yet another, I get it. I totally get it.
Did You Talking to Me live up to the expectations?
I mean, I've seen that moment before, you know, like in context.
In context, how did it feel? Yeah.
Yeah. And I totally get why everyone.
And it's all improv. Can you imagine?
Oh,
I think the script said, you know, Travis talks to the mirror.
Oh, no way.
That was it. Yeah.
I did not know that. I could easily see how like everyone walked out of the movie theater going, you talking to me? You talking to me?
Yeah.
Hey, should we get a bite to eat? And someone's like, you talking to me?
So good.
But in this movie, he's like lifting, you know, he's like, he is acting.
He's lifting. Yes. He carries the movie.
I'm curious if he was nominated for this.
He was. So it was nominated for Best Picture. He got nominated. Jodie got nominated, and the score was nominated.
Okay. Yeah. Those are, I mean, they were all good, very good.
How great was Jodie Foster?
She's very good.
Yeah.
I have some notes.
Really?
I mean, not on her. She's great.
I'm looking at her and being like, wow, she's fully formed, just as good as she ever is. And
Jodie Foster's fantastic, right? Like,
what are your notes?
It's not about her.
Okay.
It's she shows up way later than I was anticipating.
Yeah.
Like, she's technically on screen early in the film.
Yeah, they introduce her very quickly in that one scene. But
I think that was one of the things I was most wrong about, besides the fact that he doesn't die at the end, or does he?
Right. That's right. When he was trying to shoot himself, you thought, I'm picturing him shooting himself in a cab. Yeah. He tries to kill himself, but all the guns are out of bullets. So you were close.
I was like, oh man, I'm half right.
Yeah.
And so I kept waiting for her to fucking be in the movie. And then like, she doesn't actually have lines until like way past an hour in, if I'm wrong. I didn't time it. And I was like, this is an odd choice, you know? And for me, I think it would work just a little better if he was friends with her throughout.
Yeah.
And we got to follow his friendship with her and his, if we got to sense his deepening care of her to the point that it drives him to do violence to save her.
Right.
Like, that would make more sense.
Yeah, she could have been like one of his regular rides, and she's always going to see this John, and then every Tuesday he takes her from here to there or something like that, and then he slowly learns about her or something, you know, another way to go about it.
Right. But I also understand that, like, the idea is he feels bad about the time she gets into his cab early in the film and asks for help. I guess she does technically have lines there.
Yeah.
And then like her pimp pulls her out.
Yeah, he's paid off.
And he gives him $20, right?
20.
Which was probably a lot of money in 1970, whatever, right? Like Jesus.
Yeah. Well, one of his cab guys is asking for hey, where's that $5 you owe me? So 20 is definitely
he bought
like $100 or something.
He bought all those snacks at the porn theater for like $2. So he can go see
$1.75.
Yeah. He can go see 10 plus porn movies.
Exactly.
So that's a lot. So I get that, like, it weighs on his conscience, right? And I think that's incredibly strong writing.
Yeah.
Because he, like, like, one point he's going through his money and he sees the 20 and he, like, puts it in his pocket, like, away from the rest of his cash.
Yeah.
And I totally understand that what the movie is saying is that, like, he can't let it go. He regrets what he did that night. He didn't save a girl.
Yeah.
And now he's going to go try to fix that. But it's like, the movie isn't about any one of these topics. They're just sort of all things that are happening. It's like a character study, you know?
Right.
And kind of like, I mean, also like Harvey Keitel, like his name is in the credits.
What did you think?
And I'm like, when is Harvey Keitel going to show up? Did he already show up and I missed him?
Yeah.
Is he one of the other cab? I think I know Harvey Keitel.
Right.
And then when he finally shows up, first of all, he's great. Like his Harvey Keitel does sleazy criminal so good. Has he ever played anyone that is neither a criminal or a cop?
I was just about to say the only good guy that sticks out to me is Thelma and Louise, and he's a cop in that. So
From Dusk Till Dawn, he's a priest or a pastor.
Yes. Okay,
there we go.
Okay.
Right? He's the dad.
Right. Well, and then you get Bad Lieutenant, where he's a cop and a scumbag.
Yeah.
And it's his greatest role ever.
That's why everyone loves him in that, yes.
Apparently, I think the pimp only had like 5 lines in the script, and then I think when Harvey got it, they gave him a lot more to do. But he's so good.
He's so good in his small amount of screen time.
Yeah.
Right?
How did New York and the score in particular hold up for you? I know you were expecting some sleaze New York. Did it deliver?
Oh yeah. I mean, there wasn't strangely any explicit shots of drug dealing.
Right.
But there were definitely people who clearly, well, that's not true. The gun salesman, he does offer to sell drugs.
Yes. So, apparently that was an improv by the actor.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And he was like, what do you want? Coke, blow, mescaline, and...
Is it sad that my first thought was like, what do I got to do to go?
I want to know this guy.
I want to know this guy. That's what I was thinking. This guy's got everything. It's like...
You got to make that friend with that one guy that your wife doesn't like.
This guy can get you a Cadillac for $2,000. Like, those are good prices. I wonder what he charges for Molly.
Yeah, exactly. How was the movie in your mind compared to the movie that you just saw?
I mean, it was so incredibly close. You know what I mean? Like I said, I got some of the details wrong, but while I was watching it, I had the experience of like have I actually seen this movie before?
Right.
I have not. I definitely have not seen this movie. I think, I mean, you tell me. Like, I felt like I did a very good job of predicting what
you were very close. Yeah.
I'm glad to have seen it. I guess I liked it more than I thought I would.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I was worried it would be more boring than I anticipated.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah.
And there are parts in the movie where it's like, it's just kind of like slow driving with saxophone playing. But Martin Scorsese does a good job of like keeping that scene on screen just long enough.
Yeah.
Then we're into the next scene.
Right.
We're introducing a new character. There's always something happening. There's always like an interesting conversation happening.
Absolutely.
So that like you're engaged, right? And I cared about all the characters to one degree or another, right? Here's the thing. It's like, I don't really ever want to watch Taxi Driver again.
Sure.
But I'm glad I saw it. And I'm glad that I liked it. You know, there's a lot of times you watch a movie and you're like, I just don't care for this.
Yeah. How does it compare to the newer movies that were influenced by it? Let's take Falling Down and Joker. Do you put Taxi Driver on top of those and then them as like sort of worthy successors in the same vein, or?
Yeah, I think that all of them are doing their job well, and there's things to like in all of them. I mean, look, Taxi Driver's the original. It's clearly the best of those three.
Yeah.
But like, there's little things in all of them that I like. You know what I mean? I think the thing for me that I was most surprised by is I really thought more of Taxi Driver would be about him, for all intents and purposes, being a menace, right?
Yeah.
Whether he's menacing crack dealers in the alley or random people, right? I thought we would get to I'm going to start shooting people at night stuff sooner.
Right. And he's more of a vigilante than just a deranged maniac shooting innocent people.
Yes, but I pictured
like your mall scene that you were thinking.
Yeah, again,
that does not happen.
I just wasn't sure, right? But I mean, he does shoot criminals, right? And I just thought there'd be more of him shooting dudes and then like being in his apartment, like writing in his notebook, like, you know,
right.
Today I killed another crack. I'm cleaning up these streets, right?
More Death Wish than
like a little more Death Wish without the action element. But I totally understand why this is a beloved classic.
Yeah.
And I get why it would have propelled Martin Scorsese forward even more. Or, you know, again, I don't know how famous he was at this time, but clearly quite famous. And his film got nominated for Best Picture. I don't know. I could easily see how someone could watch this movie and not like it.
Yeah.
I get that. But it'd be hard to deny its like artistic value, you know? I remember when the Joker came out. I mean, look, we live in a different time where like everyone's opinion can be spread immediately on the internet.
Yeah.
But I remember there being a lot of articles that were sort of along the lines of this movie is like celebrating white men's fragility and like how it's like celebrating their violence or whatever, you know? Yeah. And I'm curious if people feel that way about Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
Because they're kind of the same deal, with the exception that like I also don't really know why he's got a problem with. I mean, obviously they cast Robert De Niro. Now I understand why Robert De Niro is the talk show host.
Yeah, I'm shocked when Joker is one of the classic Batman villains, which is the key word. So obviously he's not a good guy. Whereas Taxi Driver, it's a little bit grayer about whether or not, you know, he's just a lonely guy that went off track and that he kills these pimps. And so I understand how that is a little bit more, not a celebration, but there's a little bit more gray to Taxi Driver than Joker, where this is not, I feel like Joker is in no way celebrating, you know, violence or white man's pain or anything like that, because he's obviously a villain. You're supposed to, you know, empathize with him a little bit and see where the path that brought him here, but I don't think it's celebrating it at all.
Well, if you look at Joker as like a story about a character, then that's one thing. But if you look at it as like it's a message,
right?
There's a theme, or we're trying to say something, right? And to quote James Cameron, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, right? It's not.
Well, I think it's really funny though when some people like don't get the message of things at all. You know, a lot of people, hip hop guys, were like, "I love Scarface. Yeah, the world is yours." And I'm like, you don't remember that he fucking dies brutally at the end,
right?
So everyone just remembers the first 2/3 where they're rich and famous and they're really successful. And I'm like, well, but the message if you watch the whole movie, the whole message is this. And I think people really like to just pick and choose whatever, you know, hits them and then ignore the rest. And
yeah, I mean, do you think Taxi Driver like has a message?
I think, like you said, it's a study of just loneliness and, the human condition and how it can go wrong.
Because for a certain type of person, John Hinckley,
obviously saw a different message in it.
You watch this movie, and what you see is this guy took matters into his own hands, and then he was celebrated.
Right.
So
maybe they really should have cut that ending.
I mean, that's the thing. Like the movie. I mean, because of the way it ends, it's like, oh, he saves the girl. He's celebrated as a hero.
Yeah.
And like that sexy blonde chick is like throwing herself at him. And he's like, nah, no thanks. I got more ahead. Right.
Mm-hmm.
But I get how but that's clearly not the message of the film.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you have any scenes that you wish had been there? Do you wish he had come to Jesus instead of blowing up all the pimps?
No. I mean, well, look, if there was one scene I wish he slept with Sybil Shepherd.
Sure.
I wish they at least got one sex scene and then she leaves him or whatever.
Yeah.
But then again, that would, I don't know, that would hit
movie.
It would hit him differently.
Yeah,
right?
for sure.
I guess I think I almost want to just watch a love story about this awkward guy and this hot girl who's into him.
Totally.
And that's my own thing. Right.
Yeah.
But I was just really charmed by that.
Yeah. It's funny how you want life to go a certain way. You want these two, you're shipping these two and wanting them to get together. And that is a totally different movie. And I really like it when movies engage you in one way and then it takes you in another. But
I mean, yeah, that's the heart of good storytelling is conflict, and it's making you, I'll say a thing.
But my point is also that these characters are so fully formed that you felt like they did have a life together in an alternate universe. You're like, there is a movie out there where these two people get together and she saves him and he doesn't go crazy, or maybe goes crazy much later after they divorce or something like that. And
I mean, I'm so glad to fucking take this off my list. I think this is the last of the big ones.
All right. Cool.
There's been none of those have been lingering in my mind.
All right.
There's always little small ones.
Well, I'm glad we were here to document it, and we should have conducted this all in the cab.
I would. Yeah. Oh, that would have been perfect. It'd be kind of like getting coffee in Cars with the Comedians.
Yeah.
Except we don't drink coffee and there's no jokes, and you just show me the movie on your iPhone. Man, Martin Scorsese does a thing, you know?
Yes.
And you taste that thing in most of his movies. And
it's chock full of it.
Yeah. It's just this is prime Scorsese. It's not quite like Goodfellas, but you can see, you can see the seeds of Goodfellas in multiple parts, right? It's funny because I was actually thinking how hard it would be to get this movie made today.
Right.
If it weren't about a pre-existing character like the Joker, right?
Right.
If Joker were the exact same fucking movie, starring everything about it, even Joaquin Phoenix,
right? But not a DC character.
If he was not, it was not called Joker. If it was just called the Clown, right? That movie would not have done nearly as well,
No way.
Right?
Yeah.
People wouldn't have embraced it.
It's funny that it did connect. I mean, it was a huge hit.
Hit, yeah. And so times have sort of changed in that regard, right? Obviously, there's all kinds of artists making all kinds of movies, and I'm sure some listeners Rodney. There's
an independent movie out there doing this.
Yeah. Look, good movie. Like I said, I thought I'd be bored a little bit, and it held my attention the entire time, minus the ending. Which, again, you're right. I do think if I sit with it and just imagine it ended exactly how I thought.
Yeah.
Then it's better,
Okay.
But I guess that's all.
All right. Well, how about them Knicks?
Thanks. How about them Knicks? But anyway, all right. This was a blast.
Yes,
good luck with future episodes.
Thank you, Rodney. Have a good one.
Goodbye.
Thank you for listening to the Movie in Your Mind podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. Follow us on socials, Instagram, Twitter, Threads, and Facebook. Email us at themovieinyourmindpodcast@gmail.com. Theme song track, Odeon, by Tomorrow's Tigers.